has changed dramatically since JDM cars became a thing. We consistently have less and less money to spend on hobbies and toys. Each generation chooses a car that's bigger, more practical, and has more everyday usability, but a lot less fun. So how is it possible that these two cars that redefine the whole definition of sports cars back in the good old days when someone else is paying your pension are relevant today when you're expected to fund your own 401k? Or is it? These cars have been competitors for generations, ever since sports cars even became a thing, and they still are today. From the toes of Japan back in the 80s to the United States today, it has been a fierce battle. Both these cars are actually quite similar. They're both very light, they're both rear-wheel drive, manual gearboxes, naturally aspirated engines, and both will remind you how fun this simple recipe is. But which one is the one to buy? In the Mazda, this is still the ND platform, but for 2024, we do have a few new updates that are quite minor, but the engine and transmission remains the same. You get a 2.0 liter 4-cylinder engine that's mounted the correct way, and it produces 181 horsepower and 151 pound-feet of torque, which doesn't sound like all that much, but considering that this vehicle only weighs about 2,400 pounds, it's actually more than enough. Let's get it into third gear, give it a little bit of send from 3,000 RPM. Yeah, this is just fine. The GR86, however, is 2,800 pounds, which is about 400 more than the MX-5, which doesn't sound all that significant, but it is quite a big amount considering how light these cars are to begin with. It does have more power though at 228 horsepower and 184 pound-feet of torque from this 2.4 liter FA24 flat 4-cylinder. But how about we do a quick race and see which one is faster? Okay, both cars are basically the same speed. They are pretty much equivalent from a dig, from a roll. Neither one is any bit faster than the other. It just depends on how fast you shift these cars at this point. The GR86 feels like it has a little bit more high-end torque though. So maybe if you're on the freeway, you will notice that. But speed isn't why you buy any of these cars. What's more important is how they handle. Neither cars are cheap for what they offer on a spec sheet of paper. None of them have super fancy features like a 360 camera or even parking sensors. But that's not why you buy them. You buy these cars for the performance. This MX-5 is equipped with the German Bilstein dampers, 4-piston Brembo brakes, and a brand new asymmetrical limited slip differential. Combine all that and you've got a great car around the corner. This thing is very light and it's hella torquey, and each and every single minor input really repositions you around the corner. It doesn't take all that much to turn this car. The suspension in the MX-5 feels a little bit stiffer and is more NVA'd. The 6-speed manual transmission in this car is absolutely perfect. I like the shifter in here better. It's shorter, it's more clunky in a good way, and there's not all that much rev hang, so this thing is great. I also really like the clutch and pedal setup. It makes it very easy to heel toe in this car, which I find a little bit harder in the GR86. There's also a brand new traction mode, which is the middle ground between traction on and off, just like in the GR86. There's a new steering wheel rack for 2024. It's light, precise, and it feels a little bit more engaging than the GR86. The new differential locks the wheels a little bit sooner than it used to, so it prevents you from spinning out as easily as before, but you can still get the back of this car out quite easily. The differences for the ND3 are minor in terms of performance. Why fix an almost perfect car? this still remains to be one of the best handling vehicles to buy. It feels very natural. It feels like you're wearing the car and not really driving and maneuvering a big vehicle. It's just so small and compact. It makes it feel like that. The GR86 has gotten bigger throughout the years, and it's considerably bigger than the MX-5, but it still handles like a go-kart. It feels very light, it feels very nimble, just not as precise and light as the MX-5. It is a little bit heavier though. This does have the performance package, so it does come with the Brembo brakes. They're 4-piston brakes, and you do get the ZF shock dampers in here, which are meant to reduce body roll, and surprisingly, they make a big difference. Just coming into this corner a little bit faster. Okay. Yep, you can push quite a bit of cheese in here. This thing is so good. The shock dampers are filled with high pressure nitrogen and oil and is designed to absorb vibrations across a wide range of speed. That means that you get more road contact and it's more stable through the corners. I feel like it's a little less playful than the MX-5, but there isn't as much body roll. It feels flatter here, and it just feels more dialed in. Yeah, it just feels perfectly centered at all times. A little hard on the throttle, and you can get the back out just a little bit. Even in traction half off mode, which we're in right now, which is track mode, it still doesn't let you kick out all too much. So it's very safe unless you want to turn off full traction control, then you can go full on Hoonigan mode. But we don't need to do any of that today. And this Torsen LSD here just really helps you out. It knows how to put power down. It just set up really well. PS4S tires here are wonderful as well. They provide plenty of grip when you need. And just like the Mazda, you do get a 6-speed manual transmission in here as well, and it's the obvious choice. You can get the automatic, but I would not recommend that. Definitely get this one. It's a great shifter. The throws are pretty short. It's a little bit lighter than the MX-5, but it feels very similar, to be honest. Very easy just to roll through gears. The bigger difference between the two cars is in how the clutch feels. The clutch travel in the GR86 is a lot shorter. The engagement point is also much smaller, and it feels very track and performance orientated. I personally rather this, especially if you're trying to have more fun, but it makes it a little less smooth than the MX-5. Okay, traction's still half off. It definitely lets you kick out a little bit, but when you need the grip, it's always available. I think the traction management here is wonderful. It does a better job at knowing what you want to do and not letting you step out way too much. I prefer the way this car manages traction more than the Mazda. I find both cars very easy to heel-toe rev match in. Pedal spacing is terrific on both of them, and it just feels very natural, and that helps a lot because both cars don't have active rev match. So they force you to actually drive the car, which is exactly what these cars are meant to be anyways. Both cars do have a lot of NVH. It's not surprising for the MX-5 because it is a convertible, but the GR86 is actually super loud for what it is. You can hear quite a bit of noise inside, especially on the freeway. The engine's also a little bit louder, and it sounds a little bit better to me. It is a louder motor, and it is a flat 4-cylinder, and there is some pumped-in audio, so it just sounds pretty good. Around these corners again. It's just so stable. It's definitely a lot faster than the previous GR86 or VRZ, and you no longer get that weird torque dip that you had before. The steering is very engaging, and it moves the car quite a bit. It's a very tight steering ratio, so just a little bit of movement and the car is already aimed exactly where you want it to be. The car also feels rather torquey, like even in third gear right now at 70 kilometers an hour, just tap the gas and you're already in your seat. It feels like it has a much bigger engine. It's probably the way they tuned the throttle response, but it gives you so much torque down low that you don't really expect from a car that doesn't make all that much power. Whereas the MX-5 can feel a little bit more slouchy when you're just at a high gear. You definitely need to downshift more often to get more power out of the car. Steering in the MX-5 still feels a little bit better, but you'll definitely notice a different pace, especially in the corners. The GR86 is just more dialed in, it's more track focused, and you'll definitely be able to take corners quite a bit faster, not only on a back road, but on the track for sure. The MX-5 might be a little bit more playful and more enjoyable and better for a mellow canyon Sunday drive, but this GR86 is definitely more designed to carve out any racetrack and do a better job at it. I do also appreciate that you do get a full digital dashboard in here, which the MX-5 doesn't come with. You get that analog gauge, which some people like, but I really like this dashboard, especially in track mode where you can have the horizontal RPM gauge, and it tells you what gear you're in, and it recommends what gear you should be in for fuel savings. And the way that you can bounce off the RPM here is so cool. And I love the flashing yellow and red lights on the dashboard. It just makes this car feel kind of video game-like, but also genuinely just raw and fun at the same time. It's a good balance that caters to not only old people, but people that are my age as well. Whereas the Miata, the MX-5, is a little bit less appealing for younger people. Okay, the brakes are solid. This is just the better, more equipped tool for the track. Yeah, the GR86 is a little more focused, it's more precise, and it's edgier, I guess. But it compromises a little bit on the fun factor that this car has. The MX-5 makes you feel like you're right at home in this car, and it really just puts a smile on your face. It really depends on what you're looking for and what your definition of fun is. In terms of fuel economy, if you care, this MX-5 does significantly better in fuel at 29 miles per gallon combined versus 22 miles per gallon combined in the GR86, which isn't all that great, but I'm guessing you don't buy these cars for fuel economy anyways. Both have adaptive cruise control now for 2024, lane departure warning, no lane keep assist, you do get your blind spot monitors though, and your forward collision warning, and this has road sign detection, which is a nice touch. The exterior on both cars are both really nice. The MX-5 has got some new headlights and taillights for this year. It looks a bit more modernized. The color on the GR86 is called TrackB Red, while the color on the Mazda is Soul Red. I think the GR86 has a bit more of an aggressive design, while the MX-5 looks a bit cuter and smoother. The big Brembo brakes and wheel options on both cars really tie them together, and side by side you can definitely tell that the MX-5 is quite a bit smaller and lower than the GR86, but ultimately it just comes down to personal choice. The interior on the updated MX-5 is significantly nicer in terms of quality and feel. It's more high-end. You now get a touchscreen and available wireless Apple CarPlay. Not a whole lot of space to put things. The bolstering on the seats are more aggressive on the MX-5, and it's fine for me at 5'8", but it would probably not be that comfortable for someone that's over 6 foot tall. The GR86, however, has 4 seats. It's way bigger. The interior feels very traditional and classic retro JDM. The seats are comfier. I like the suede and red accents everywhere. You get wired CarPlay and Android Auto here, no wireless option, a digital dashboard with pretty cool tachometer and a bunch of different gauges that you can go through. There's more space for things throughout. The speakers on both cars are okay, but nothing extraordinary. The GR86 rear seats are good for emergencies, not really for any practical use, but at least it's there. As for the MX-5, well, there is none. The trunk in the GR is a little bit bigger at 6.2 cubic feet versus a 4.6 cubic feet in the MX-5, which isn't that bad considering that the MX-5 has a power retractable hardtop roof that folds in just 13 seconds. Obviously, if you want a convertible, you should just stop watching this and get yourself an MX-5 because the GR86 only comes as a fixed top. Overall, the GR86 interior feels a little bit more youthful, it feels a little bit more modernized, while the MX-5 interior feels a little bit more analog and more traditional, which it really just comes down to which one you prefer. The world is a very different place since the 1980s, and while the rich keep getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. CEOs and investors are getting nicer Porsches and hypercars, while the rest of us are left with a pretty much stagnant wage relative to the cost of living now. Every decade since these two cars have come out, enthusiasts are trading in a little bit of fun for a lot more practicality. the MX-5 and the GR86 is as fun as you could possibly get under $50,000. And with that, you'd expect them to sell in the millions, but they don't for one reason. How many people do you know that have $30,000, $40,000 laying around for a brand new toy? The GR86 and the MX-5 do compete price-wise, and from a performance aspect, they are kind of similar. The GR86 is a bit more practical, a little more track-focused and dialed in, while the MX-5 feels a little bit more authentic and a lot more fun when you're just cruising around the canyon roads, especially with your top down. It really depends on your priorities, and either way, you can't go wrong. Nowadays, boring SUVs are taking over the world, and maybe soon enough, EVs as well. Humans are so good at making our lives more efficient, accomplishing more tasks with fewer cars, making less noise, using less gas, or none at all. We're so good at optimizing our lives to be as efficient and practical as possible that we forget to actually have fun and enjoy life. We need to remind ourselves to stop and smell the roses. It's insane because you shouldn't have to remind yourself to have a good time. You should make it a priority. And cars like the MX-5 and the GR86 has always been a reminder to do just that. That's all, guys. Thanks for watching.